Hi, my name is Heinrich, I'm a former McKinsey consultant, and today we will be together reviewing some consulting TikToks. So I asked a friend of mine to browse TikTok and collect a few consulting TikToks, hopefully some of them humorous, some of them a bit more educational, and I will look at them right now and provide my live feedback, and in doing so hopefully also some insights, some explanations where you can take some value from that as well. So I have the first one up here, so let's get going.
I'm so excited to be working in consulting. We're excited to have you on board. I'll get to help companies solve their problems and fix their businesses. I can't wait to make a difference. You already got the job. I mean, make a difference? That's a good one. What are you talking about?
I can't believe companies are still buying that garbage. All to then pay us millions of dollars for pretty PowerPoints.
But the PowerPoints have crucial insights so they can make better business decisions.
Right, how could anyone else think to cut costs by firing 30% of their workforce?
So that TikTok is drawing on the notion that consultants are not adding real value. And some of the things that I mentioned here in the video are of course correct, right? So of course, often they're juniors working in these firms. Yes, it's very heavy on PowerPoint, what many consulting firms at least are doing. Though it is important to understand the mechanism, why and how corporate leaders start to value consultants. And so let's imagine a typical project that you are commissioning as a C-level person, as the CEO or any other senior leader in such a big corporate. Often this is divided in several work streams, so several pieces of work that need to be conducted. And then some of these work streams might be covered by an external consulting firm. Other work streams might be covered by internal professionals from your team. And then let's try to understand what happens, right? Very often, every other week, every second week, you have a steering committee where then the consultants or also your own internal professionals are presenting results. And what then often happens is that the consulting teams, every week, they have great progress, great steps forward, lots of results, very fast paced. Whereas then suddenly you realize that your internal professionals, they don't really progress, they don't really advance, they struggle, they're not used to the speed, to this level of deliverables that the consultants are working on. Suddenly you notice this big gap in quality of what is happening. And this then at some point leads to the realization for many of these senior leaders in business, this is at least my humble experience, that whenever a topic is really important, whenever it really matters, whenever time is of the essence and results need to be created fast, that then a consulting team needs to be staffed on these high priority projects. So let's look at the next one.
Hi everyone, I'm the new Deloitte consultant assigned to this project to bring my expertise.
Welcome to the team. Are you then an expert in our industry?
No, not at all. I just finished university like a week ago. Honestly, this is the second time I wear a suit in my life. The first time I think it was at the interview.
But our team has been working for the past 25 years in this industry. How can you know more than us?
In the interview process, I solved a case study. Basically, I solved a fake, highly abstract problem very good. And this gave me the confidence boost I needed to tell you how to do your job better, since now I think I'm better than you.
I see. Is your service at least cheap?
No, not at all. It's terribly expensive. And last night I even put the 10...
Exactly, right? So this is about the idea that essentially in consulting there are all these young people working there that don't really have a clue, that don't really know what they're doing. And to some extent, of course, this can resonate with me. So when I started my internship at McKinsey, I was, I think, 20 or 21. So was at the end of my bachelor. And of course, I lacked all the domain knowledge, right, that you would likely need to not talk at eye level to many of these very seasoned, very experienced business professionals on the client side. Still, it is probably a misunderstanding of how consulting firms operate to then say, well, if this is the case, if this is how the team is staffed, then the consulting firm cannot really succeed, cannot really add value. Because the truth is that, of course, a typical team is staffed based on a mixed degree of seniorities. There are the more junior consultants, and these indeed can be young graduates fresh out of university. Often, of course, it's not only an intern, but at least these people often will have 1-2 years of professional experience in this junior consulting role. But then these people work together with a project lead. And typically the project lead has already industry experience, is doing this for several years, has seen things similar, related to the topics that are being worked on in other companies, often in the same industry, maybe even across industries. And then in addition to that, there are the senior leadership people, right? So there are junior partners who typically spend several days per week together with the team. The more senior partners likely a bit less, but then often they will be part of problem-solving processes. And these are deep knowledge experts. So typically, at least, these are people who spend decades in the industry focusing on the topics at hand and really are extremely knowledgeable. This at least is my humble experience, having gone through these types of projects regularly. So it's a mix, right? And of course, every role focuses on what they can do best. And what can the junior person do best? Where typically the people that get hired in these junior roles in consulting, they're very strong in crunching the numbers, doing the analyses, and then deriving insights from that, of course, supervised by the more senior people. And this is, to some extent, the strongest weapon that you have available as a junior that also enables you to add value in these projects, your analytical abilities. Because if you have a strong, data-backed, fact-backed argument, it doesn't matter that you don't have years of experience, right? But the numbers speak for themselves. And this is a skill that you will pick up very quickly in the large firms like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, but I trust many others as well. The super fact-based analytical way of dissecting problems and then deriving insights from that. And based on my humble experiences, is something that you can do also very early in your career if you receive the right supervision. So let's look at the next one.
McKinsey consultants are essentially just really expensive scapegoats for CEOs. When they hire McKinsey, they don't expect these consultants to come in and save the company. Instead, they offload these very risky decisions to McKinsey and get them to come to a verdict, lay off this many people. And when things do go wrong, instead of firing the CEO, they'll just fire McKinsey and be like, oh, like this is not my fault. McKinsey came up with this idea, so let's just fire them. And then the cycle repeats. Do you think that's true?
So this is also something that you quite often hear, right? So the consulting firms being scapegoats. So essentially, the CEO or the leadership of a company already knows exactly what to do, already have a plan in place, and then they just task a consulting firm and ask them to, in the end, make this very recommendation to then be able to point fingers, say, well, this is not what I wanted, but this is what they wanted, and then they also are supposed to take the risks and so on. And here I can only share that based on my humble experience, having spent around 6 years in consulting, I did not experience a single project where we were confronted from the start by a client saying, this is how the solution needs to look like, this is what we expect you to say, this is what we expect your recommendation to be. Of course, you might find yourself in situations where you're working in maybe also critical business situations where a company is struggling, really struggling financially, and it is clear from the start that at least a part of the recommendation might be also some uncomfortable decisions. And of course, it will be then also clear for the perspective of the CEO that there might be some uncomfortable decisions that need to be taken. But then the role of the consulting firm is to go far deeper, right? Because often this is then only where the whole problem space starts. So what exactly do you do? Where exactly do you have opportunities to cut costs? If you are cutting certain costs, how can you ensure that the business can still run afterwards? Yeah, that essentially the key processes of the business can still be operating on and so on. So these are the tasks that you are investigating. And if now you want to claim that this is about making the consulting firm the scapegoat, not sure this is how these people intend this to be, but this is the truth. This is what you can expect in these types of projects.
Absolutely. That's a very alluring, enthralling, riveting question you're asking there. You know, before we get deep down into the sort of boeuf bourguignon of the question, you know, we must first ask ourselves, you know, what is the chambre de séparé? You know, that's kind of the coquin vin that is intertwined.
So here, I trust the idea is that consultants are expressing themselves in a very complicated, pseudo-sophisticated way, which is not then really backed by the value. And I'd say to some extent that's true, but to a large extent it's also false, right? And it's true in the sense that, yes, in consulting firms you hear these types of like meme expressions, these meme business expressions, you know, that you are not supposed to boil the ocean, that you need to like pick the low-hanging fruit and all these types of things. So yes, this is a language, a type of talking that is very common. So to some extent, there's just a common vocabulary that is shared among the people, where people refer essentially to concepts by using these, albeit sometimes a bit cringy expressions, but then at least everybody understands what the person is talking about. But at the same time, I would hold that it is a great skill, a great virtue of many of these consulting firms, and what is instilled in you very early on, from the very start, that you need to communicate very, very clearly. Yeah? So clear communication, professional communication is, I would argue, one of the main skills that you learn in these large consulting firms. And this is definitely one of the things that I took away from that experience myself as well. And to the contrary, you're rather trained to speak in very clear language, very easy to understand language, both orally but also in your documents. How can you cut complexity, take a very complex situation that is going on in a business and break it down to the fundamental building blocks, to the basic truths, to the first principles that then allow you to discuss them effectively and also explain them to a C-level round without now overcomplicating things with unnecessary details. And this is actually the mission of firm learning. I want to make these skills, which typically you only pick up after working for years at firms like McKinsey, BCG or Bain, accessible to everyone, accessible to you, to enable you to leverage these skills for your own career progression. So if you are interested to work with me and several other senior former consultants and executives, you can sign up for a free initial consultation for our firm learning mentoring program, where we will analyze your situation and create a tailored plan for you. If you are interested in that, link in the video description. So let's look at one more.
How many red Skittles do you think there are in Cancun, Mexico? How tall do you think the Eiffel Tower is in tennis balls? How long would it take a 52-year-old man to get from New York City to Baltimore on a unicycle?
So this is now drawing on a cliche of how a consulting interview looks like. Yeah, so that essentially you are being asked these estimation questions. Yeah, how many tennis balls fit in a car or something like that. And while I don't want to disagree that these questions can still come up with some of the companies, based on my humble experience, also having gone through a significant number of consulting interviews throughout my academic career as well, I did not encounter a single estimation question when interviewing with a whole set of several consulting firms. So while I do not know if some of these firms are still using them, I'm sure some of them still are. This is now not at least how your typical consulting interview looks like, especially not with the large strategies consulting firms like McKinsey, BCG, Bain. You are facing these case interview types of questions, though these are very different from these typical estimation questions. I'd be super interested in your view on these topics as well, so leave a comment in the comment section, then we can have an open discussion. And if you took any value out of this video at all, hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all the content. Big thanks to all the channel members of Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich, all the best to you and see you in the next video.